Looking for a late night spot to get the crew together? 3 words, Buffalo Wild Wings. They've got drinks and apps starting at $4 from 10 p.m. till close. B-Dubs, where late night food and drinks start at $4. Cheers to that. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void or prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp had an MRI exam to determine the extent of his hamstring injury. The Rams hope to have an update later today or by Friday. Kupp walked off the practice field Tuesday after running a pass route. The Rams are concerned that Kupp might be out for an extended period. He missed the final 8 games last season with an ankle injury that required surgery. 6 other wide receivers are on the Rams training camp roster. Only 3 have NFL experience. Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, and Tyler Johnson. There are more indications the Pac-12 conference is crumbling. The Big Ten Conference has begun preliminary talks with Washington and Oregon. USC and UCLA are joining the Big Ten in 2024. Colorado is moving over to the Big 12 next year. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
KBLA Talk 1580. This should be an interesting conversation. Happy to welcome in the co-founder of the Descendants Project. She says she channels her affection and knowledge into challenging systems, primarily legal systems, that have exploited the descendants, such as herself, of those enslaved to plantations, now working to gain recognition of burial grounds of the enslaved as sacred sites, protecting those sites, creating more green space, protecting communities from degradation, especially that caused by heavy industry. As a resident of Louisiana's Cancer Alley, she champions environmental justice causes and is developing strategies to transform land slated for use by pollutant-causing industries, a whole bunch more. Joe Banner, Executive Director of Descendants Project. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for talking to us. So, talking and posting and preparing for the show today. A lot of people hadn't heard here on the West Coast hadn't heard of Descendants Project. So break it down. How did this come to be? I mean, there's so many issues that seem to be intersecting in your work. How did this start?
Well, I think intersection is a great way to describe how we are in the position that we are as the co-founder or having the Descendants Project organization. But really how we started is because we love, and I say we, I also am operating this organization with my twin sister Joy. So you hear me say we a lot. But we started it because we just love our community. We love the history. We love the heritage. We were blessed to have grandparents who were our babysitters while my parents were working. And our grandparents just were always open about communicating what their lives were like, farming, gardening, the history of the area. And it just brought our community to life. And it gave it so many dimensions, and they really fleshed out the many different intersections of our community. So living in that space and just the dynamics of it all, wanted to really inspire my sister and I to want to create an organization that would highlight our history, but also realize that we needed to help our community. We needed to help the health of it. We wanted to really eliminate some of these systems of slavery that we're still seeing play out today, and still holding our communities captive in many different ways. So this organization, really, we started thinking it was going to stay kind of small until we had time to really grow it. But as soon as we started, it seems like we were thrusted into the public arena. So we have used that opportunity to really highlight the many issues facing our community and what we can do to help.
Yeah. Of course, I was on your Instagram scrolling away, and it's the Descendants Project. If you want to follow them on Instagram, the Descendants Project. Joe and Joy, the twins. There, one of your posts has a quote: "We are the victims of a crime that happened, and here we are still dealing with this crime." We just got off a kind of heated conversation last hour about crime. When we think about crime, we think about people taking stuff from a Gucci store, or stealing a car, or maybe attacking someone. We don't think about crime in the bigger picture. So what are you talking about when you say we are the victims of a crime?
So in my community, and I'm in Wallace, which is in St. John the Baptist Parish, between an area between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, if you're familiar with Louisiana. But 30 or so years ago, Formosa Plastics, which is a plastics company that's really trying to actually settle in nearby parish of St. James Parish. But in my area, this company attempted to locate into my very small community. So we would have been wiped out. We found out that the parish president at that time was involved with a scheme to actually change the land zoning for the property that this company was trying to locate to. So it went from a residential zoning to heavy industry. And the parish president was behind this by corrupting and coercion of this the council and also the planning and zoning commissioners. Thankfully, he was caught by the federal government before the plan actually happened. However, the zoning of the land still was able to remain heavy industry. And because of that zoning, the crime stayed on the books. So this person, Lester Miette Jr. was his name, who went to jail, was convicted actually twice because he appealed the initial conviction. But believe it or not, the crime that he committed was allowed to stay on that land, and it's being used right now to introduce more heavy industry into our area. So right now, my community, what we're facing is the attempted location of a grain terminal by Greenfield, Louisiana, which is not a Louisiana-based company, by the way. So because of this illegal zoning, they now have an opportunity to put this monstrosity of an operation into our community and essentially just put heaps and heaps more of pollution into the air, into the water. And by the way, we live within feet of this heavy industry zoning. And you just can look at it and see the criminality of it all. Yet it's still, we have our St. John the Baptist Parish officials who say it's okay. We have many industry people like the Port of South Louisiana Economic Development, who are refusing to see that this is a crime and it needs to be resolved, or else our community will continue to be victimized by even more and more pollution on top of what we're already facing.
Wow. I mean, I think it's indicative of the kind of environmental racism that goes on around the country, and around the world. But just the fact that this man actually went to jail, but his crime, the thing he went to jail for, remains the law of the land, is quite insane. Continuing our conversation with Joe Banner, you're welcome in 800-920-1580. Listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where we're amplifying Black and progressive voices around the clock.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
MC Light for AARP. Hip hop, the cultural phenomenon that took New York by storm in 1973, is celebrating 50 years of rocking mics and crowds. Whether you're a ride or die hip hop head or simply curious about its origins, check out the latest issue of AARP the magazine. It celebrates this incredible milestone with a featured story brimming with fun hip-hop facts and history. Head over to aarp.org/Black community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/Black community.
Moments like my daughter telling me a new joke mean a lot to me. But after being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, or MBC, which is breast cancer that is spread to other parts of the body, they mean even more. I take Ibrance, palbociclib.
Ibrance 125 milligram tablets with an aromatase inhibitor is for adults with HR-positive, HER2-negative NBC as the first hormonal-based therapy. Ask your doctor about Ibrance and visit Ibrance.com. Ibrance may cause low white blood cell counts that may lead to serious infections. Ibrance may cause severe inflammation of the lungs. Both of these can lead to death. Tell your doctor right away if you have new or worsening symptoms, including trouble breathing, shortness of breath, cough, or chest pain. Before taking Ibrance, tell your doctor if you have fever, chills, or other signs of infection, liver or kidney problems, are or plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding. Common side effects include low red blood cell and low platelet counts, infections, tiredness, nausea, sore mouth, abnormalities in liver blood tests, diarrhea, hair thinning or loss, vomiting, rash, and loss of appetite.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with Joe Banner. She's co-founder of the Descendants Project, fighting against environmental racism, fighting for environmental justice is a big part of what they do. And when you connect the dots, why do you call it Descendants Project? Why is it that, your area and the history of that area is funneling right into this concept, this activism hub that you've created?
Sure. Well, we call our organization the Descendants Project because we descend from the enslaved of the nearby plantations in Louisiana, some of them which are still operating as tourist attractions and museums. But we're highlighting that connection because you're talking about a population, if we're talking about the enslaved Africans that were exploited for economy. So these people were kidnapped and brought here. And speaking of crime, I know in a last conversation, but this is a crime that really hasn't been really necessarily acknowledged by our country. I mean, you heard even with in Florida, the situation of talking about slavery and saying that, well, at least the slaves had skills that they can use today. And you would never say that about someone who was falsely imprisoned and who would leave and say, oh, well, you know what, too bad you were falsely imprisoned, but at least now you have the skills to become a mechanic. So it's all good, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I hate these comparisons, but can you imagine while you were in a concentration camp, but at least you learned how to do hair or whatever? I mean, they would never fix their mouths to say that about any other group except black people.
Exactly right. And it's because I think the true ill of slavery, the true negative impact and what it did to the population, to my ancestors, hasn't been recognized. I feel like it's still in our country's, the back of our mind. Yeah, the people were enslaved and assaulted and raped and attacked, but look what it did. I mean, it still was like the economic engine, so it was like, oh, it's okay. I don't think we've come to that reality. So that's what we fight for, just acknowledging the impact of this, the exploitation that lives were exchanged so that other people can make money. And it's still like, we're still fighting that today. So as you have a concentration of plantations in my area, within the river parishes it's called, which is now called Cancer Alley, you have the highest concentration of plantations. Now you have the highest concentration of petrochemical plants. And it's no coincidence because as these owning families sold their lands to the petrochemical companies, they had the perfect footprint for petrochemical companies by being close to the Mississippi River, by having a large acreage of land needed, by being owned by very few landowners. So they sold their land to these petrochemical companies who could pay them millions, by the way. So this is not even a real possibility that me or you could just buy the land because we're talking about millions. It would be very hard for someone to be able to afford that. So this land goes to petrochemical companies and other heavy industries, but the descendant communities around it are still there. So now they're on the fence line, as what is called the front line of pollution, as these petrochemicals come in and they're refining oil, and then they're also using these chemicals to make plastic. And plastic, sometimes we hear these analogies, well, your car bumper is made from plastic or heart valves are made from plastic. But really what's being made are things like ketchup packets and straws and bags. It's not even these big life-changing things that's been often said in the narrative. It's small things like that. So our communities are facing, like mine in St. John the Baptist Parish, we have the highest cancer risk in the country at the 95th percentile. My community of Wallace actually has it in the 97th percentile of cancer risk.
Wow.
And because of that, yeah, it's really, and that's cancer. As I say with people, it's bad enough to die from cancer. It's really right. But the suffering from the cancer is what we also want to recognize. These are not easy deaths. This is not like peaceful deaths. These people are dying of battling cancer, and they're on multiple forms, cocktails of pain, medicine, just to make it through the day, and they're still suffering. So it's a very hard fact, but it's one that we're hoping to change. We're hoping at least to bring light to we need everyone to pay attention to this. This is an international problem. We're a small area of Louisiana, but we have big international ramifications. International players are all involved in what's happening in the river parishes and Cancer Alley. So our fight is why we fight in a very local level, and also we fight internationally.
Yeah, it's really well said. I mean, I just can't even add anything to that. But I find it very moving in a way that you are fighting simultaneously to literally save the planet from the menace of plastic and pollution, chemical pollution, but also to commemorate our enslaved ancestors through sacred space, to creating these sacred spaces. So let's talk a little bit about that before we go deeper with plastic. These sites, especially in the context of what you just said. Oh, slavery was apparently a job training program now, and you go a little deeper into this curriculum that they're disseminating in Florida. It lists attacks on and by African Americans, and under attacks by African Americans, they list all these white riots, which were where white people came in and burned our communities to the ground. And if we defended ourselves, that means that was an attack by us. That's the kind of history that Florida is setting the example for other, red states. So it feels like the preservation of the physical history, the historical sites, becomes more urgent.
Absolutely. It's especially now with like my community, and as I talk about being descended from the enslaved, but even for my own realization, I'm understanding that my enslaved ancestors, there's also other identities layered onto that identity. Right. And another identity is that they also were Union soldiers. They fought for the Union. They left the plantation, escaped, joined the Union encampment in my community, and then some of them actually learned to read and write by the fire, by the fire of the on the battlefield, learning how to educate themselves. Then they formed communities together. They pooled their money together, which would have been difficult, right? They had no money, very little money. These soldiers came together and started communities that are still existing today, which is what my community is. We're called the Freedom Community, or a free community, or Freetown. So look at the investment, I think, about in the ingenuity and the wisdom that these people who had nothing came together and created a community that thrived and survived. So preserving that is very important, as others want to come in and say, you can't make it unless you have us. And if you want us to be here to make something of you, you have to give up everything that your ancestors worked for, because that's not good enough. So, I talk about this side of the identity because it's one that I'm starting to lean into more and saying, we never needed you. We literally were making it on our own. We had nothing and made a thriving community with historical buildings and churches and farms and gardens and homes and community living together. I was blessed to have my family around me, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-aunts and uncles, because of this community that they made, and we took care of each other. So I think it's important to preserve areas like this for our Black history. I also found that someone in my community, like in the 1800s, was one of the founders of Southern University, which is a famous HBCU. Came from my very small town. I had no idea about this. I told my mom about it. She's like, I had no clue that this person came from Wallace, which is where I'm from. So it's important to really connect with these histories and connect with not just buildings, but also the lands and the indigenous who are also part of the land, who maybe we don't see them as much, unfortunately, because they were pushed out. But bringing all these histories to life, it makes the area more exciting and dynamic, and even, adding to the joy of it all. In addition to the hard times, we also want to remember all the wonderful things, too, that our communities were able to achieve.
So what does that look like, preserving that? Are you talking about signs? Are you talking about historical designations? Like, how do you preserve and protect, whether it's a burial ground or, to your point, some remnants of all of these other amazing achievements?
So we had an important designation by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which identified our community as one of the 11 most endangered sites for 2023 historic sites. So getting that recognition really brought attention to our area and the history, and more eyes are seeing it. We actually have a petition to protect our community, actually from the grain terminal that's trying to locate. And we have, I think, close to 10,000 people have signed that petition, half being from, I think, the United States and half being from international. So getting that attention has been really good, and working with nonprofit organizations like the National Trust and highlighting our story and communicating with them and saying, hey, we need your help. And of course, they know too from their own work, but making those connections and networks have been very important. We're also under consideration to be a National Historic Landmark, 11 miles of the West Bank of St. John the Baptist Parish. So that's something that we're working with the National Park Service and getting community members to submit their stories and their comments about the history of our area. So this is not about, these organizations aren't making the history, they're simply documenting the history. The history is already here. So what's really great, right, is having a way to focus everybody's attention, having these projects, these two different projects. I just want to say they're two different projects, but getting everyone focused and say, wow, y'all, there's attention here. And we need to start paying attention to our own history. That's not being made. It's already here. It's already an asset that we have. But let's all really lean into this process.
If folks want to sign that petition, where can they find it?
They can go to our website, which is the descendantsproject.org. And right on the banner, there's a link to that petition. It will bring you right to it. It's very easy. You just put your name, I think, and your zip code. And you can also leave a comment, which we would love to see. I love looking at the different comments that we have because it's a mixture of environmental justice concerns and amplification as well as historic preservation. So if you would like to leave a comment, we surely would love to hear it and read it.
The Descendantsproject.org. So, I mean, I think, there's probably a lot of our members of our KBLA delegation that would like to sign that petition. We only have a minute and a half before news, traffic, and sports. Of course, we're going to continue on the other side. I want to get into plastic. I want to get into how, what you're doing connects with really I hate to say survival, but it is survival and the potential thriving of all of us in the whole world. But just a minute going into news, traffic, and sports. This idea of Descendants Project, of us, standing up and continuing the battles of our ancestors. Talk to me about what that means to you personally.
For me, it's always the through line of it all. Like always remembering how exploitation can change and how something that, how it transforms and how we always have to watch it and we always have to be aware of impact to community. What is my decision? Who is it impacting and the closest to it? So it's made me more aware and also connecting with other communities around the globe who are facing environmental justice issues and making me more conscious of how my actions are impacting somebody else. So definitely being able to connect with international communities, and believe it or not, we have the same struggles in a lot of times. Although we're thousands of miles away, we are fighting and battling the same demon. So I'm looking at my decisions and seeing what impact that I have and thinking about, well, how is this? How would I appreciate this happening to my community? So it's just that realization in short form.
Talking with Jo Banner, co-founder of the Descendants Project, news, traffic, and sports. Then more of the conversation on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump is calling for the new criminal case against him to be moved to West Virginia. Trump posted a fiery statement on his Truth Social platform Wednesday night and said the latest fake case brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith will hopefully be moved out of Washington, D.C., and claimed it's impossible to get a fair trial in the nation's capital because it's anti-Trump. Attorneys for the man who pulled the trigger in a mass shooting at a top Club store in Buffalo, New York, will be meeting with the U.S. Department of Justice soon. The lawyers for Peyton Gendron will talk with DOJ officials in September as they attempt to spare their client from the death penalty. Gendron has already pleaded guilty to killing 10 African Americans and injuring 3 others in May of last year. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Looking for a late night spot to get the crew together? 3 words: Buffalo Wild Wings. They've got drinks and apps starting at $4 from 10 p.m. till close. B-dubs, where late night food and drinks start at $4. Cheers to that. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void or prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp had an MRI exam to determine the extent of his hamstring injury. The Rams hope to have an update later today or by Friday. Kupp walked off the practice field Tuesday after running a pass route. The Rams are concerned that Kupp might be out for an extended period. He missed the final 8 games last season with an ankle injury that required surgery. 6 other wide receivers are on the Rams training camp roster. Only 3 have NFL experience: Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, and Tyler Johnson. There are more indications the Pac-12 conference is crumbling. The Big Ten Conference has begun preliminary talks with Washington and Oregon. USC and UCLA are joining the Big Ten in 2024. Colorado is moving over to the Big 12 next year. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Global Urban Cultural Community presents Testimony of Sounds. Rhythms from Africa, the diaspora, and beyond at Allensworth State Park in Early Mark, California. Featuring Lamert Park's very own Baba E.
Hello, family. This is Baba E. On August the 12th from 11 to 5. We're hosting the first performing arts performance by Chester Whitmore, Little Washington's Dance Troupe, Rhythms of the Village, Lady Dread, and others will be performing on that day.
Here's spiritual, jazz, doo-wop, blues, bebop, hip-hop, and more. That's Saturday, August 12th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
To contact us, you can go to my website, that is globalurbanculturalcommunity.org. Eventbrite tickets are there. Lock on, get a ticket. Again, go to our website, globalurbanculturalcommunity.org.
Or call 301-717-2424 or 323-365-9239.
Need help with the job hunt? It can be challenging, but don't worry. LA County has your back. With a variety of available support services, you'll get the help you need while finding a job. We're here to help you succeed. Let's get started. Find out if you qualify at recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. That's recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. LA County and you, moving forward together.
Have you heard about Lendistry? Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered right here in LA. Once you've started your business, Lendistry provides flexible financing options starting at $50,000 to help you access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit lendistry.com/KBLA to learn more.
Carson, get back!
Hey, I am Jasmine Carson, LSU Women's Basketball National Champion. I had to up my game, and this time I upped my intimate grooming routine too. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area. Featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and a skincare regimen that is dermatologist tested, Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about the full regimen of products.
Extreme heat can make you very sick and can be deadly. For Californians 65 and over, it's important to have a plan. Ask your healthcare provider if your medications affect your ability to cool down. Know the signs of heat illness and stroke, as well as the location of your nearest cooling center or air-conditioned space. And if you have loved ones over 65, be sure to check in on them on hot days. Learn how to stay safer from extreme heat at heatreadyca.com. Brought to you by the state of California.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin ultra strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Yeah, roll it, yeah, drop it. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl. Yeah, it's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Yeah, I want to give you the heads up before I forget. Tomorrow we'll be featuring Nana Camille Yarbrough. You may know her from her famous book, Cornrows, or you may know her from her pioneering music. So I want to give you the heads up about that. I think she probably has some big fans among the KBLA delegation. Take Your Praise, maybe her biggest song. Anyway, right now I'm really enjoying the conversation. Hope you are too, with Joe Banner, who's executive director of Descendants Project, Louisiana fence line leader, and she's been breaking down what their organization and their community is really all about. One of the things you did is you were part of the first Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to develop this legally binding instrument about plastic pollution. And I just think, I know that I'm addicted to plastic in terms of all those little things you were talking about, the ketchup packets and straws, all these things that we didn't need, but now we apparently do need. Like before we didn't need them, we functioned without them, now we do need them. But I don't know if a lot of us realize what a menace plastic really is.
Exactly. And even when you just described yourself and you said you had a plastic addiction, but really it's not a plastic addiction that you have, is that the products that you buy are wrapped in plastic.
Right.
So the companies have the plastic addiction. You're just trying to buy the product, and that's the way it comes packaged to you. And right? So
yeah, that's
you're buying
true.
Somebody else's.
I mean, I get paper straws off the internet. But it's like, yeah, you want to, okay, I want to get this makeup, but it has all this, what, do we need all this plastic? Yeah, you're right.
Right, and it's kind of getting that recognition, that realization where consumers are feeling guilty because they feel like they're the problem. Like,
Right.
I'm the one that's making all the plastic, and it's like, no, you're not. You're buying somebody else's plastic problem, and then you're left to figure out what to do with it. And we don't know. We only have so much space and so much time in our days, and now we're left to deal with someone else's trash. So really just like fighting and recognizing that and pointing out that so much of plastic is just really, the majority of it is unneeded. But it's been something that is being promoted, being lobbied for by different companies, by the fuel companies, the petrochemical companies, the oil companies who need a plan B. And plastic is their plan B. Despite the health impact of it, we're on the life stream of plastic. We're on the upstream. We're through all streams of it, midstream and the end life of it. But particularly at the upstream, whereas when you're using and producing the chemicals that go into the production of plastic, where we're feeling so much of those health impacts, where we have the high cancer risk, where we have the high asthma risk because of the production of plastic. So these decisions have real life consequences. It's not just an innocuous, okay, it looks bad, it's litter. It goes way beyond litter. This is really cleaning up our systems, like internally, and our health.
Well, there's a couple things about it that really stuck in my mind. One is the microplastic, the little tiny particles of plastic that are now being found in human tissue in almost every single person on the planet in these studies. And we don't really know what that does to our bodies, but I don't think you have to be a scientist or a doctor to figure out that introducing a foreign agent that's not biodegradable into your body system is not healthy.
Yeah, it's not, now with microplastic, it's even smaller now because I'm hearing it's nanoplastic. So as we are looking at even if you don't see plastic, right, before I think the problem has been, well, if you don't see it, it's not a problem. Now we're realizing when you don't see it, it becomes an even bigger problem because now it's entering orifices of our body. Babies are being born with plastic in their bloodstreams already because it's so tiny. And even many of the solutions that have been offered to us, like biodegradable, or the plastic will break down, and then that solves the solution. Well, no, it doesn't. You just can't see it. So now it has even more capacity to enter our bodies. It's harder to eat a plastic bag, but once you break it down, guess what? It's a lot easier to consume that plastic bag because you don't see it.
Ew. That's terrible. And of course, when you talk about cancer, but we don't know. There's so many things we don't know that this can do to our bodies, but we do know because we keep hearing about, certain plastics being better than others when it comes to cancer, right? We do know these are carcinogens.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as a safer plastic. Even one of the areas that I'm working with is reuse. Instead of throwing things away, what models can we use to where we are keeping our supply in our hands so we don't have to produce anything? And a lot of times the solution that organizations and companies offer is just, we'll make reusable plastic. Reusable plastic is still plastic that has to be produced. So my community, if you're making plastic that can be used 20 times versus single-use plastic, then guess what? It's still being made in my community. We still feel the same health impacts. Wow. So there is no safe way to take the toxins out of plastic. Now, reuse, if you think of glass, that's something that's a safer alternative. Although we also have to think about the impact of glass being produced because it will have impact on somebody's community. But we're just thinking of alternatives. No matter what, you will have an impact to somebody. So it's what we always want to bring is as we're trying to adjust away from plastic. Also, how do we protect communities that are going to be on the fence line of the solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that really sticks in my mind are these giant islands of plastic waste floating in the ocean that are bigger than whole states. And just traveling in Africa, I didn't see islands, but you see in the most remote, beautiful places, plastic bags, plastic bottles everywhere. And it really feels kind of scary. Talk about those islands of trash. And then if you would speak a little bit about this, this negotiating, this deal that came out of that negotiating committee that you were a part of.
So, seeing the trash and also speaking with the people who live around this trash is impactful. It's when you realize, honestly, how the recycling myth that we can recycle our way out of this problem is just truly false. And I hate seeing now that recycle symbol because that's a just false solution that if I find a way to drop this into a container and bring it back, then the problem will be resolved. And what's happening now is that these countries are getting tons and tons of plastic, and even the countries that were involved with recycling, they can no longer handle the amount of plastic that's coming at them because plastic is still being produced. And even in the recycling process, you're melting plastic, and now the chemicals are getting into the air. So now you still have the problem of the toxic cause. I've heard that it's actually even worse when the recycling process. So the true solution is reduce and reuse for that. So
So I want to talk about the some of the solutions, including what you've been involved with negotiating. I'm glad you brought that up about recycling because I'm learning that some folks aren't even really recycling. They're just whole cities are just saying they are, and they're not. But I want to get a little peek at what is possibly working when we come forward. Joe Banner is our guest, co-founder of the Descendants Project on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominic DePrima when we come forward.
Contracts, and grants. This is Rambo, and I'm back August 5th. Contracts, and grants. I'll be at the Westin Hotel, LAX, Saturday, August 5th. Me and my guests are fast-paced in the contracts and grants. They only speak 6 minutes each. I have LA County, I have the city. I even have Everett, the CEO of Lendistry, coming to talk to you guys. And for the first time ever, I have Metro's Director of Certification coming. We average over 700 attendees, so you know the rules. Parking's about $15 with the event validation, event, coffee, snacks, all free, paid for by Rambo show of industry. And yes, you can bring guests. So save your seat, DeannaRambo.com. Listen, contract ready's only 2 hours from 10 a.m. to 12. But if you get there around 9:30, I'll probably be doing some Q&As and things like that before the events I never get a chance to do. I honestly keep saying, I don't know what's more important for LA businesses right now than local contracts. So I'm back, Westin Hotel, LAX, Saturday, August 5th. August 5th. It takes 2 minutes to register. DeannaRambo.com. Go register now. DeannaRambo.com.
Attorney Joe Cordell.
Divorce forces a father to focus on what's most important, his children. You may no longer be a husband, but you'll always be a dad. In the divorce process, this comes down to 3 key concerns: physical custody, decision-making, as well as financial support. Each of these is important, and it's important that you choose a lawyer that cares as much about these issues as you do.
1455 Frazee Road, Suite 1050, San Diego, California, 92108. CordellCordell.com.
When I can't sleep, my mind just races. I think about work, the kids, but I don't think about taking melatonin because I'm afraid I'll feel groggy in the morning.
ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies has an optimal dose of melatonin for no next-day grogginess, so you can fall asleep naturally and wake up feeling refreshed. ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies for better sleep like never before. And try Pure Z Sleep plus Next Day Energy with melatonin plus extended release B vitamins.
Dominique DePrima for KBLA Talk 1580. Are you worried about your credit score? Well, look, you can rebuild it. There are lots of factors that go into determining your credit score, but one of the most effective ways to improve your score is to consistently pay your bills on time, over time. If you're forgetful about payments, like me, try automating your bill payments. That way, all your creditors get paid on time, and you'll have freed yourself of trying to remember. Whatever your financial goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Initiatives can help support you in reaching them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
On a Mission Youth Travel presents the 2023 Morehouse Homecoming HBCU College Tour, October 25th through October 29th in Atlanta, Georgia. Open to high school students grades 9 through 12. For more information, please call 323-298-4779. Again, 323-298-4779. Students will tour Morehouse College, Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, Alabama State, and Tuskegee University. Email info@onamissionyouthtravel.com. Again, info@onamissionyouthtravel.com. The HBCU tour price includes all meals, transportation, round-trip airfare with one checked bag, hotel accommodations, all museums, college tours, and admission to the Morehouse versus Kentucky State University homecoming football game. Spaces are filling up quickly, so call today to sign up. 323-298-4779. Again, 323-298-4779.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
Right now, talking with Joe Banner. Really, really nice to meet you, and just such a fascinating conversation. Thanks for spending your morning with us today. So let's talk about, we're talking about some of the fake solutions. We placate ourselves by thinking we're recycling. Sometimes those recycling things are just false promises. Other times they're creating even bigger problems with the toxins we've seen at some of these recycling plants and melting that plastic back down. Talk to me about what this negotiation was and what it accomplished.
Sure. So the negotiations are ongoing. It's actually 5 different meetings that are part of the treaty talks, and we are. I'm actually headed to Africa, Kenya, for the 3rd session. So there's 4, potentially 5, in order to come to the end of the process with a legally binding treaty to deal with the pollution of plastic. But what we're fighting for, what we are as a frontline community, and I go there representing my community and talking about the upstream impact of that, really is to bring our voice into the conversation. There are a lot of different countries that are involved. There's industry that's involved as well. So as we are there, and part of the talk, there's also big oil that's there as well. And what we are doing there is just really making sure that our cause is not forgotten, that our health is being part of the talks, and moving forward in that direction of saying, always bringing it home to remember at the end, these are our lives that you're talking about. And we want to be always considered in that process and have the voice. So I think as we're moving along, and it's tough. It's not an easy process to be a part of, but this is what happens when you work in the treaty process. It's difficult. There's a lot of negotiations that take place, but I think the fact that we're here having it and we're addressing it on a global level is a positive. I know there's a lot more work to be done, but the conversation has been started, and it's also an opportunity for us to speak about our issues. When a lot of times, like for me in St. John Parish, I'm ignored on a local level. It's easier for me to go to Geneva, Switzerland, and talk about my own community than to go 15 miles to my parish seat and have an audience in front of my own council. So I think sometimes I've heard our trips described as glamorous. But like, no, it's not glamorous. It's actually sad because we have to take on a lot of miles to be heard. You know, if it means going to Africa, if it means going to Switzerland, if it means going to China, wherever we have to go, we are ready to go to defend our health.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you're doing that. I guess what I was reading was about the beginnings then of this treaty, because my understanding was that there was at least a preliminary agreement, of course, on limiting plastics. And I guess the agreement is the agreement to produce an agreement.
Exactly. So it's very different process. And we have the language in the draft, the zero draft, and that has to be negotiated as you get to go through all the different INCs.
And so, I mean, you know, this is a series of 5 meetings, a treaty, some kind of deal, final, like you said, legally binding deal comes out of this. And that could, it sounds like from the conversation I've just had with you, Joe Banner, that you'd like to see us not use plastic at all.
Absolutely. It's just, not plastic, because it does not, we see what happens through that process. So, I have to re-examine my life and see where can I eliminate this. Also, we have to examine the solutions to plastic. In my area, or I hear a lot of solutions that include aluminum and steel, like reusing bottles and reusing cans. But guess what? In Cancer Alley, we have an aluminum plant that is one of the worst mercury emitters in the country, and we have a steel plant that also causes a lot of pollution. So it's a hard question when you're like, you have to consider everything, all the different solutions that are proposed because they have the impact. So everything has a consequence. Everything has a consequence, and it's part of the discussion and why we have to really think hard about what direction we want to go in.
I mean, that's crazy to me because, I mean, I was just reading how aluminum is so much better, and I'm trying to buy, water in cans, and that water is really expensive. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm thinking, well, maybe it'll come down when everyone starts using it. But now you're telling me that's not really a solution. It's probably just another illusion. Is it the water in milk cartons? I mean, I know it's not just water. There's a lot of other things. But when you think about what can we push our corporations to do, because you're right, they're the biggest polluters. They're the biggest users of fossil fuels. They're the ones that can make a difference tomorrow with one policy change. What are we pushing them to do?
Well, exactly. So we want more reuse systems, like the biggest plastic users. For example, Coca-Cola uses a lot of plastic for their bottles, right? Of course. But this is also a company that used to bottle their beverage in glass. So if anybody knows how to have a system that doesn't use plastic or aluminum, it is somebody like a beverage company. Think about this is before my time, but my mom always talked about how they received their milk in glass bottles, and the milkman would come, pick up the milk, bring it back. They had a great system going. So actually it's not as hard as we make it, because the systems have already been there and have been done successfully. It was only, I think, until the 1970s that Coca-Cola started using plastic. I think the same year that I was born almost. So the company existed well beyond that. But also like bulk, selling things in bulk. There's no reason why you have to get everything individually packaged, whereas maybe you can give it to them in a way that you give them a glass container, they refill it. These refill systems are also cheaper. So they save a lot of money too. So we need these big companies to start grasping onto that and looking at that and understanding and working with us in solutions that will help everybody and actually even save them money.
Yeah, it's amazing that they'd rather, like you said, pivot to what are we doing with this petroleum rather than, how do we save money and save lives? And how do we support you? How do we keep track of you and support the work that you're doing? I'm always on here hollering about the planet because I just feel like no other issue matters if we don't have a habitable planet for human beings. I love, your Black-centered, way of dealing with these issues. How can we support the work?
Thank you for that. And one of the best ways that you can help is you can go to our website, the descendantsproject.org. We have a newsletter that you can sign up for. We also have, if you feel so kind to donate to our cause, you have a donation button there. But really what's so important to us is your voice and signing on to our different petitions or writing comment letters. That means a lot to us. It means everything, really, having the voice of the community and of the world looking at this and sharing that thought and opinion. So if you go there and follow us, and we'll keep you updated on the different actions that you can take. We often submit comments to the EPA, to the White House, locally, federal agencies, and having that sign-on means a lot. It's
amazing. We say think globally, act locally. And it sounds like in your case, you have to act locally and globally because the local folks aren't listening. I feel like a lot of us get discouraged by what's happening in Washington, the defanging of the EPA, the fact that the Biden administration is not doing everything they can to save the planet, if we're being honest.
It's not right.
Yeah, so going to the UN, like Malcolm X before you, that may be what we got to look at this point. You think that's right?
I think it's absolutely correct. That no matter the administration, we want more. It cannot just be when you're running for office that you talk about environmental justice or mentioning Cancer Alley. We need more action. We need more accountability, and really stopping companies when we see the pollution. There are many tools that the White House themselves have created that show the pollution and the risk. So why don't we have action with this? Why do we have the dragging of the feet and seeing people get sick, and also the planet heat up and everyone dealing with more weather issues or more weather extremities? So we need engagement, and we're like, we can't accept this from anybody, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, independent, whatever. There needs to be accountability, and people need to address the problems that we're facing.
Jo Banner, thank you so much. It's been an enlightening hour. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
The Descendantsproject.org. Tavis Smiley is up next with his own enlightening hours. Straight ahead, I'm Dominique DePrima. History's now, and we are making it together. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm